'Cause I'm yours to keep if you want to.
So what I'm also going to do, though, because Helena will be coming back and because I'll get beaten up if she stood outside for too long.
She's for sure going to get stuck outside for too long.
Yeah, exactly. So what I am going to do is set a timer for...
Do you do like do not disturb
Yeah,
or something and just leave it on so like you can answer if she calls?
yeah.
'Cause
But
otherwise
also,
you're
what a
gonna get
timer...
beaten.
Yep. But what a timer does is make sure that we can't
Go
beat
past
around-
dinner time.
but also beat around the bush. Means we have to get straight in because the clock's ticking.
Talk fast, baby.
Straight with the hard stuff. Straight with the soul talk. None of the formalities.
Well, we're gonna go right from the beginning. So
The beginning of what?
what's your full name?
My name is Kane Chattey.
Are you named after anybody?
Yeah, I am. I'm named after Kane from Menace to Society.
No way.
Yeah, I am.
That's wild.
Yeah, so it was either... Well, my mum said it was between Trey from Boys in the Hood and Kane from Menace to Society.
Funny.
Yeah.
Not how I would imagine
Yeah,
your
right?
name came about.
Right? Some like... My mum was 18 when she had me, so some 18-year-old white woman from the south coast of England. And now here I am on just off of Fairfax Avenue.
Perfect.
It's literally perfect.
Yeah. Amazing, man. That's crazy. And so where were you born?
I was born in a coastal town in England called Bournemouth.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how long did you live there?
I lived there till I was 18, and then the first chance that I had, I moved out to London.
What was life like for those first 18 years?
Confusing for the most part. Confusing and at times scary. Hopeless. And formative, really. Challenging and formative, I guess.
Is that just because where you were living just didn't have a lot going on and it was like one of those things of figuring out what to do? Or what was like the general atmosphere in the city? Like what kind of city was, is it like an industrial type place?
No, so it's a coastal town, so really it thrives off of like tourism. So
Okay.
In the summer it's popping, in the winter it's not really. So but really and truthfully it's just like it's a tourist destination. It's like there's not really anything happening there. It's a university town, and it's a beach. Like
Okay.
7 miles of golden beaches, which isn't really impressive in California, but
There.
back home it's like most beautiful beach, one of the most beautiful beaches in Europe.
Were you surfing or any kind of water sports or anything?
No, they didn't really do anything like that. It was
Okay.
more just like, it's a very British thing to
Go out to the beach.
Just go to the beach and just
Yeah.
kind of sit there and go in the water.
Yeah.
It was just at the end of the day, it was like, it's at the bottom of the country, so people are only going there to like hang out. No one's trying to really live there. No one's trying to invest there. No one's trying to build anything there because there's just nothing there to build really. And the people, the mindset of the people, it's like they have the beach, they have the summers, they live for that, and that's about as deep as it goes really. Yeah, it's just a bit of a weird place. Like I take my girlfriend there and as soon as we get there, she's like, this is just a weird place. The place where I grew up per square mile has the worst crime
way.
in the whole of the country. Like the most rapes, the most murders, the most drug offenses, the most like pedophiles and shit. It was just a mad.
Wow.
It was where anyone would get sent for rehab. It was a big rehabilitation center. So literally on my high street was just like, it was like Skid Row basically. My high street, everyone just high all the time, everyone fighting, everyone like getting robbed. It was just common to just see people get beat up, just be ODing on the street. It was just like a bit of a war zone really. Like,
Sounds like it. That's insane to grow up in that.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, but that sort of stuff kind of mirrored what was going on at home as well. So it wasn't like, none of it shocked me. It was just my life really. I never looked at it like it was foreign until it started to like affect the people around me that were looking after me and things like that. That's when I was like, okay, well, this is not right.
Yeah.
This is bad.
Yeah.
This is making me feel like scared and anxious and lost and afraid, and these are feelings that I need to get as far away from as possible.
Who was your family unit? Like immediate family unit, brothers, sisters?
No, just for the first 10 years, it was me and my mum and whatever partners my mum had in those times, which were never really healthy. And then she met a guy who ended up, they had a kid together who was my little brother, Bradley. They stayed together, but then again, that turned toxic and abusive. And so that was basically it. Then it got to a stage, my mum left him, and then it got to a stage where she was always reliant on men, partners and stuff, because she ran away from home when she was a kid and then had me straight away. So after that, she was always reliant on men. Then they broke up, and then she basically was like, I can't look after you and your brother, so you have to go into care. So I went into foster care for 4 or 5 years and kind of bounced around between homes and families and stuff.
What age?
From 11, so the start of secondary school, start of high school, up until about maybe the last year of high school, secondary school. So from about 11 till about 14, 15.
And what was, like, at that point in time, what kind of things were you into? Video games, sports, music?
Yeah, I was a keen footballer. I was a good footballer. I played for the town team. I eventually had a scholarship for Duke University, which I didn't take because I wanted to be creative. Loved music, saw the effect that music had on the people around me who were 24/7 miserable, apart from when there was some music playing.
Yeah.
And just making stuff. Like I always used to draw. I always used to make stuff, build stuff, like DJ sets with my friends and foster brothers and stuff. So yeah, just anything creative, really. That was kind of, I loved trying to find ways out of the situation that I was in. So basic, just escapism, really.
Yeah.
Remember my first like real memory of like what feels like an independent thought was I was sat in the front garden of our house, and it was just mud, like just dry mud. We didn't have like grass or anything. And I remember sitting there and looking up at a tree and thinking, oh, I could put a sheet and hang it over that, and we could make a circus, and I could perform for people, and they could give us money, and then we wouldn't have to live in this shithole of a house anymore. And that really sticks in my mind as like, I've always kind of been looking for that like way out. How can I take the responsibility onto my shoulders to get myself and whoever's around me out of the situation? I always felt like I had this ability to make something or do something that people found valuable.
Sure.
In that sense.
And in that point, you transitioned from, like, I guess what would have been high school type time to playing football, and then you pivot into like getting a camera in your hands. What's like the path to?
Alongside all of that stuff, I'm rapping, actually.
No way.
Yeah.
I got to hear some of that.
I'm rapping over Mac Miller beats or Primo beats or Ninth Wonder beats. I'm ripping every instrumental I can find off of YouTube, and I'm just making songs with this USB Samsung mic that I had. And I'm just going so hard on my cracked version of Logic. And then I thought, well, I need to make some videos, like standard, you know what I mean? Like that's the natural progression.
Yeah.
Because I saw Mac like running around making his music videos. So I thought, all right, that's what I'll do. So I worked a construction job and just carried wheelbarrows around until I could afford a camera. Got a camera.
Do you remember what that first model was?
Yeah, that was a Canon 550D.
Okay.
So the Rebel T2i, the staple of like entry level prosumer camera, like the first DSLR. And then I started making music videos, and then people would hit me up and be like, I need a music video that looks as good as that. So I'm like, okay, cool, great. I start doing that for other people, and suddenly before I know it, it's kind of like taken over as my main passion. And also as a means of looping back into that central idea of like using it as a means of escape from a situation. People were paying me. So I thought, well, maybe I can make a job at this. This seems to be like more reliable than making music. So I did that, and I followed that, and I was right.
Do you remember who the first artists were that you were shooting videos for, and like roughly what the pay was when you were doing like those entry few things?
The first one was a guy called Miles. who was the older brother of one of my best friends from school.
Okay.
Miles Lamb, and he was a few years older, and he loved Mac Miller as well. So, and he had money to pay for professional studio sessions. Professional, it was a guy who kind of knew how to run Pro Tools and had like an audio interface and stuff. So it was like as professional as that gets. But it sounded great, and he had the money and the energy to invest in it. So we were all kind of just like making music together, and I was filming his videos, and it kind of gave me that platform to explore the ideas that Rex Arrow for Mac Miller, who was his videographer, was like doing as well. So yeah, I kind of projected that like vision of Mac and his whole Pittsburgh team onto what we were doing in our small coastal town. So Miles was like the big one really for me, who was like, here's 50 quid. Like, what can you make us? Here's 50 quid and a bag of weed and like whatever food we want for the day, basically. And that was it. We would shoot a video. We would get in the car, drive to the next location, and I would edit that video. And the video would be done by the time we get to the next location, and then we shoot the next video. And it was basically like, for a couple of weeks, we just rolled around like that and just hoarded content, really. Yeah. That was it. That was like, and it was great. Like, that feeling is, I guess, just what you try to maintain throughout this whole journey, is like that camaraderie first and foremost, that and just that like determination that you're doing something that is valuable. That's the what I remember most.
To somewhat go back a little bit in that, what was like the method, or do you remember how you learned how to operate a camera and like how to operate editing software? Because like those are both two somewhat savvy technical things to like just grip and rip, you know? Yeah,
no, it was literally run and gun, grip and rip. It was trial and error. It was like just picking it up and doing it and going, all right, we need to do that one again, because the camera wasn't rolling, because I didn't know which button was record. And then it was for some reason this is exported with 1,000 glitches. I've been working on this for like 3 days now and I haven't slept. This might just have to go out with glitches on it. Like, if you went back and looked at it, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I didn't transcode that footage, and that's why this is all out of sync now, and this is in a wrong sample rate. And in hindsight, it's really easy to pick up the ideas, but there wasn't really like any education behind it. It was just like
ambition, learn on the job.
It was just like you just do what you could. That was basically it. You see what you like and you try to copy it, and that was it really. I ended up going to college and then university for a short while to figure out all of the things that were going wrong, find the solutions for all the things that were going wrong. But when we began, it was just like everything was wrong, but everything was right, so it didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter if anything was glitching, it didn't matter if it was out of sync. Like, we had just worked to get the camera, and we had just gone out and shot it, and we were actually believing in something, and we were trying to do something and trying to create something which nobody else cared about or cared to explore or whatever. So the technical stuff didn't matter, and it still doesn't matter to a certain degree.
Yeah, of course.
It still doesn't matter. It's just that, you know, we can switch our minds to build amazing rooms like you have upstairs, but at the end of the day, like, it's all secondary to the feeling.
100%.
To the feeling of, well, how can I keep chasing? You know, that was it really.
Yeah. And how did things progress for you? Like, you started with those guys. Was that just like you just kept meeting people by word of mouth networking? Did you ever start advertising? You start working for anybody else?
It went me doing those bits and then going, right guys, I'm off to university now. I'm off to London. It's only 2 hours up the road, but to us it feels like
another country.
It does feel like another country, a whole new world. So I went to university to study film after 2 years of college, film studies, media studies, all of that stuff. I said to myself, there was this YouTube channel in the early days of YouTube called SBTV, which was basically documenting the whole grime scene in London. And it started at the same time YouTube started. So there was nothing like it in the world. Like, there was no access to anything like that. The window into all of these like people who were just like you, people who just had this like ambition and desire to create, and it was like the most eye-opening thing to me. And I used to watch that channel religiously, and I said, well, once I get to London, I'll give myself a year to get my foot in at that company and be able to shoot for them. After about 6 months of emailing the founder over and over again, and the founder had rose to fame. Like he was on front of magazines as a mogul. He had his own YouTube advert on the TV. Like it was a really, really big thing for youth culture. And I was just hounding him every week. Every week I'd shoot 2 or 3 videos for just people in university, artists that I'd find on whatever. And I'd be shooting videos, and I remember I shot 5 videos in 5 days. And then after that 5th day, I was in a lecture and I got a text message from Jamal, who's the guy who started SBTV. And he said, "Thank you for your 1,000th email. If I give you a job, will you leave me alone?" And I didn't even really respond. I kind of just put all my shit in my bag in the lecture, and I got up and walked out, and I never went back to university. I went straight to the offices, and I was like, what can I do? Like, I'll do anything. I'll shoot whatever you want. I'll edit whatever you want. I'll sweep whatever needs to be swept. I'll spit shine whatever needs to be...
Not whatever. Just shoes. Just shoes.
And then that was like, okay, well, let me trust you with this thing that's not important, just to see if I can trust you.
Yeah.
Cool, smash that. Like, turn it around as quickly as possible. Fast forward 2 years, and then I'm the creative director at the company. I'm overseeing everything. I have kind of a lot of the stuff that's coming out is my vision. I'm working with an amazing team, amazing artists, amazing brands. Like, pitch it, just doing crazy things that like I always wanted to do. Working with, like, Starbucks would come to us and be like, "Hey, we got £500,000 and we want to do something in music. Run wild." And we're like, us.
Okay.
Us.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? I'm sure we could figure it out. And we just call people from an estate, from a hood, from wherever, from a coastal seaside town, and be like, "Here's an opportunity. Do you want to take it?" And then we would just kind of document everything. And then on the side, I was making music videos for every artist in London. I was shooting acoustic sessions with every artist in the world, like going to shoot Beyonce shows and Ariana Grande and John Legend and everyone from anywhere, basically. Just getting the call all the time because everybody wanted to be featured on the channel. Like, every PR company wanted their act to have that validation, that like youth approval. And I just did that. That was basically where that part of my life ended, really.
Yeah, that was right when I met you.
Yeah.
You were in the thick of all of it.
I was in the thick of all of that, but also on like the back end of it all.
Yeah.
Because it was not making me happy for some reason. I didn't get as much out of it as the younger me hoped that I would. It wasn't any resolution.
Was it for you, like, in that sense, like, when you were younger, was that specifically the goal that you'd work to achieve? Like, for me, I understand because I can resonate with that. Like, I felt like I had gone as far as I could go down the road engineering for people, which, like, went way beyond anything I could ever imagine. But at the same time, it was never anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't want to engineer, it just snowballed, avalanched. Like, and it was just like, oh man, I'm meeting all these awesome people and these amazing artists and different parts of the people coming from different parts of the world. And now I'm meeting like legacy artists I grew up listening to, and like, they're here at my spot. And like, all these things were like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. But to some degree, it was like, that was never the goal.
Yeah.
And so I can relate to, like, I burnt out, like, almost ironically timed with COVID. I started hitting that wall of like, wait, man, like, I'm doing major label artist sessions, major publishing company artist sessions, independent artists, like all these people, and it's exhausting as fuck, and it's not really what I want to do. But I stuck through it because it helped throughout the last like 14 years fund acquiring all the equipment and getting the room the way I wanted and getting set up to transition back to what younger me wanted, which was like, I want a record label, I want a management company, I want to be like signing and working with these artists. And yeah, awesome. Got a fucking guy who just decided to blow some leaves at like 7:00 at night, just slowly walking by outside, just holding just the trigger on the fucking.
Go home. Go home. No one cares about the leaves. It's dark.
Yeah. But I can relate to that, and I'm wondering for you if you had that same experience of kind of like you check all of the boxes and some, you know what I mean?
You didn't even know were there.
Yeah.
You reach for boxes you didn't even know that you had the ability to grasp, and it tricks you into feeling like you should be grateful and that you've extended your reach far too much, and you're in a position of privilege in some sense that you have something like worth keeping, but it just wasn't really making me happy. Like, less than that, it was making me miserable.
Yeah.
Like I got to a point where I would have rather have died than carried on
that.
And I don't think it's because of like, I think it was because of the not knowing of what it was that was kind of like aching in me. And while I'm distracted with all of that stuff and feeling these feelings of guilt, like if I give this up, like, so first of all, something that I've worked so hard for. Second of all, something that I'm so lucky and blessed to be bestowed with. Like the guilt of feeling like it's ungrateful to reject those things. But it got to a point where I couldn't not. I would have to reject like life itself and fucking my own breath to be able to like to bear it. I just, as you said, I burnt out.
Was it something that happened? Like, did you notice that it, like, or even looking back on it, does it correspond to, like, for me, a lot of it was feeling like in music particularly, like, I love it so much. And I'm around, or was around a lot of people who just do it for the sake of, like, being an entertainer and making money. And, like, it threw me further and further. Like, it became polarizing because it's like, that's not me. You know, like, I do want to have a certain level of financial success to fund other things. Like, I would love to be able to fund an artist's entire career and just be like, cool, I have staff videographer, staff graphic design, staff photographer. You know, if it's not going to be me engineering, which is still my favorite thing to do, staff engineers. And like, I can help somebody who I just recognize has extreme talent fulfill like their dream and get them like on their journey and like towards their destiny. But I started to just feel like people were taking advantage of me a lot, in that like I'm just an overly nice person and I overextend myself to like help people out. And a lot of the times I would be like helping people out, but nobody would ever really like look back to be like, hey man, like you just helped me start my career. Like I'm going to like, I just got signed to a major label. Like now I can come back and like book your studio and like pay you full rate to like make up for shit that we did. And we can like go, it's just always been this like, and I never fault anybody for it. Cause I get it when you're like, when things start moving, there's like 1,000 things on your mind. So it's hard to like make sure you're going back to look at like every person who's helped you achieve your position. But that got to the point where I was just like, same thing. Like I'm like, just sad about where this is leaving me, you know, and like doing like a, you know, my rate now, like if I even were to take a session's like $180 an hour, and people like scoff at that. And I'm like, fuck, you have no idea what I did to like earn this, you know, and like how quickly I work and how the quality of work is going to be. And like, it's up to you. Like we could do an album in an hour. If you come in here ready to cut, like I'm on it, you know? So it's like people misunderstood me and my use, and it started to, like, I don't know if I set up the perception or if somebody else did in some way, that it was just like a writing room or a little, you know, it didn't have the regard that I wanted or felt like I deserved from the years and years of work and like building to this stage. And with COVID, it kind of gave me that like step back, look at everything, reassess, redirect now towards the original goal of like joint venture partnerships with artists, management, like things that make me excited, executive producing, co-executive producing, like vocal producing, like getting my hand into something the way I wanted to. And like, it got me re-inspired to do that, you know?
But what really interests me about you is that you have all of that stuff, and it's something that I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that now you have that clarity, you will achieve that. Like there isn't anything so far that you haven't achieved. You literally have the best studio in the world. Like, all of that, sweet. I fully believe that. But there's also this like creative side of you with where you put your music out, where you attempted like the weekly music releases. There's also this like solo artist, but I don't mean like solo artist, but there's something inside. There's something more beyond that's trying to break out.
Yeah, 100%. And
which kind of coincides with the COVID thing too.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that factors in.
I think that goes back a bit to like what I was saying with almost like prioritizing other people and putting other people in front of me to help make sure that they're good and like they're set up. And that has like that mixed with being like extremely ambitious. Like some of the goals I have now are like extremely lofty goals with like rebuilding a new music-based social network platform that will hopefully like lead into other stages of like influencing like the world in a way that can be really positive. And my path into that is through music and the relationships I have through music. But there's always been like a super desire to like create music as an artist. I think
was that the primary force behind you becoming an engineer?
That was the primary force behind me getting started. Yeah. So in high school, I went to boarding school in Switzerland for a year, and one of my brother's friends, Skylar, was like the first person I ever saw record himself like in a laptop into GarageBand.
Yeah.
And like I downloaded GarageBand and I was like, oh man, there's like loops in here. I can loop these things up and like put this together. And I started like making beats off like GarageBand loops because like I didn't have the physical skills to play. Mm-hmm. And like that's always been my Achilles heel is like I have now every instrument under the sun that you could want to make music with, and I still would say I'm not a musician. Like I've never mastered a craft in an instrument form. Like that's always been my downside is like I have crazy like visions or like whatever I guess like mental vision of music playing in my head that I don't know how to like articulate. And it hits me in like spontaneous inspirational moments where like I try to translate that or figure out the tools because I obviously watch people do that on a daily basis. Like I haven't worked out, I've never like mastered a tool that helps me translate the idea, you know? And I have like a mental barrier I think I've just given myself, which is like the same thing why I don't like write books because I'd love to like write books. But the translation of like the speed that my brain is going at and like the motor skills to go out, there's like a block, and then that makes me start to go into like an overthinking headspace, and then I just lose like the specialness of it, you know. And I haven't ever worked at it to the point that it requires the discipline consistently every day to work out all of that so that I can just sit down and be like, cool, turn this up. I have this idea for this chord progression. I know, you know, like it takes me time if I hear chords in my head or hear notes in my head to like walk up the neck of a guitar until I find like, okay, there's note 1. There's note 2. They work together. There's note 3. Okay, that's close enough to what I wanted. What's the rhythm I'm going to play this in? Okay, cool. Now, where does this go? I have to go find, okay, there's note 1. There's note 2. And like, I haven't consistently gone through that process enough to say like, okay, now I can like get through this.
Yeah.
And I've always looked for like shortcuts, like, oh, let me find a MPC, and an MPC has like the 12 note programming, so you can like take a sound and just put it in 12 notes. So I know, you know, now I'm learning like, okay, cool. It's like the first note, third note, fifth note in a scale, seventh note in a scale, maybe sometimes like the second, fourth, and sixth, depending on the mood. But I'm understanding how to move mathematically, which is like where more of like my brain is at, and it helps me understand how to link the notes. But I've looked for like MIDI controllers that have like pre-programmed chords, and then you just get caught in this world of like, fuck, I have so many options. Like this is too many options, you know, like now this chord player does 700 chords, and now I want to go through these, and it hasn't translated in that way. But music to me has always been this like super personal journaling effort, and like coupling that with like the emotion I feel at the time and just honing like that as like my tuning fork has been the goal, you know. And that's why the very little stuff I've even played, like I played for people in the studio and like just turned around and they're just like crying. And I'm just like, whoa, like I never imagined, you know, like that it would resonate like that. That's really fucking cool, you know? And in the like ambition sense with the studio and everything always being like go, 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 go all the time. If I take like a 4-hour window and I'm like, I'm going to make a song in 4 hours, like I'll maybe start on the path, get hung up on some part of it and be like, I'm not really like sure I like where this is going. And then my mind flips into like, hey dude, you got to like mix these songs for these people by like Thursday. You're like, are you sure you want to be working on this right now? And it just like stifles and stifles and stifles me out of that process. So although COVID would have been the ideal time to do that, I still had like crazy financial pressure for like having to pay like apartment and studio and utilities and insurances and
You don't have to tell me.
yeah. And so that started to weigh on me super heavy. And instead I dove in like cannonballed into crypto and like just saw like I dabbled in this in like 2017 when my brother told me about it. I'd like know that I need to go learn like technical analysis, market analysis, like understand things deeper. Got enrolled in a program that my friend Ty at Volatile Alpha like set up. He's a music guy who turned into like a market guy, and I learned a lot and like got in this great community, and it helped me start to see like financial stability in a way that like in the next calendar year, 2 years, it should be like passive income that supports like everything I need, so I'm good, you know. And like that's another big just crucial element of like checking that box. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about getting away from that being a music dependent thing is it opens up the freedom for music to now be only what I want it to be, you know. And that's where like creating with Nick Grant, like that album I was just playing you, like we made that album in like 2.5 weeks, you know. It's just like the naturalness of like how that came to be felt super right, you know. And staying in that headspace creatively is like, okay, you know, I found it. But another reason too for me is like the pressure of how talented all these people I've met are, and just seeing like, holy shit, like if I'm going to make a beat, but like I know all these people, like A, I could try to call them and have them send me some beats so I can just make stuff over their beats, and B, they make stuff like so fast and like they're so good at it, and like why can't I? So it's like this weird position to be in as like a desperately creative person without the masterful skills, you know. And I've been same as you, like a learn on the go kind of a job. Like I've had a couple mentors who've been in and out of my life that have taught me what I needed to learn at the time to advance, but I haven't gone to like mastercraft level. And like I realized when I had Cam Obi, who's like a really close friend of mine, producer, is like one of my favorite producers and artists and creative people of all time, staying with me in like 2014 or 15 and making the decision that he was going to be like a rapper and a singer. And we would be working in the studio for like anywhere from like 8 to probably 18 hours a day, like 5 days a week. And I would watch him like completely change his diet, watch YouTube videos about like building vocal like diaphragm and breathing control, like technical skills, write a song, practice like recording like a verse or a chorus for like the entire 8 or 16 hours, like singing like straight, sometimes like a word at a time, a phrase at a time, a line at a time, 70 takes of one word, one line, one phrase. Okay, cool, do the next one. Okay, cool, do the next one. Then in his mind, he already knew, like if he liked something, he'd be like, okay, what number was that? I'd be like, take 47. Okay, cool. What number was that? Take 63. Then we'd get to the end of the verse or the chorus, and he'd be like, okay, let's try 47. Oh no, let's try 63. And I'm just like, fuck, dude, like how do you have that recall on top of doing all of that? We comp together like a verse, have it all like how he wants. We're walking out of here at like 10 o'clock at night to like walk back to my apartment, put on headphones, listen on repeat to whatever we just made, wake up the next day, wipe everything we just recorded, start the whole process again.
Yep.
And I watched like from the very infant stages of that to like, dude, you're singing like Prince now, you know, like that's how it's done. That's the level of commitment, discipline, skill set. You know, like for me, I wanted to learn how to play guitar. I went and bought a guitar. I started trying to play like scales, asked friends who play guitar. I talked to Cam about like him saying, I want to learn how to play guitar. The first 3 months he was on YouTube and reading, these are the types of guitars. These are the types of strings. This is what this sounds like. This is what I'm after as far as like the sound of it goes. Like before even buying a guitar, he did in-depth research.
Yeah.
Then like got the guitar, already being like a musical person, like had a way to maneuver. But like the mindset of like starting a new skill to mastering a new skill independently is a really difficult thing to program yourself to do, at least for me. And to watch him do that was like a great example of like, this is the method, you know, this is the process that like I need to instill in myself, because I could like self-learn something and just get caught in the joy of doing it. And then like, that was kind of what happened with engineering. And then I look back and I was like, holy shit, like 10 years just went by, you know, like one long day, 10 years. But like now I can engineer, like I can direct somebody through that studio halfway around the world. Just be like, oh man, there's a cable in this drawer, on the third drawer down to the left, press power on this, make sure cable is here to there. And so, you know, it's like embedded in me in that regard. But I don't know. I haven't fully figured out what it is yet that's going to be like the artist inner thing I need to like really deeply connect with before I die is in there. You know, like you definitely nailed it. That's like still 100% a must. What's like in your eyes, after I just rambled for like 15 minutes, that same kind of path progression, like you hit like all-time high in directing and video production, and then made the pivot to singer, guitar player, multi-instrumentalist, recording engineer again, and started building your own projects. Is that like from day one always been like the core, or is there other things in your life that are still like, this will eventually be, you know, where I'm headed?
I don't think there's anything else. There are other things that I'd like to do. I'd like to make a game at some point.
Cool.
I would like to make a film at some point. I'd like to make a kid's book at some point. I'd like to make an animated series at some point. But you best believe that I'll make all of the music for all of those things and everything else as well. Music will always be that thing for me. Like for some reason, I gave up a really well-paying job, a really prestigious job, a dream job in my eyes and in many's eyes, and said, I'm going to make music. And someone said, I didn't know you made music. And I was like, I don't. And that might be the problem. That might be my problem, is that I don't do that thing that I'm doing all of this for. I'm making music videos, I'm working with artists, and at the end of the day I'm hiding behind all of that. I'm thinking that just being in the vicinity of all of that is enough for me, but it wasn't. You spoke earlier about kind of like this, not saying that you are, but this feeling of resentment towards people who didn't ever look back at the effort that you put in for them. And that resonates with me because I had those experiences, but I felt the opposite. I never felt that resentment because I was kind of conscious of the fact that I was using them as much as they were using me. I wanted to hide. I wanted to hide behind them. I wanted to serve them because I was too afraid to face the other direction and serve myself. So I always understood that in a certain regard, that there's mutual dependency in that sense. And that it kind of all circles back to that. Like the whole thing was somewhere I got distracted, which was when I was a kid making music videos. I got distracted. I got blinded by this need to survive, money, etc. And And then somewhere along the line, I saw other people doing the things that I wanted to do, and it planted a seed in my mind that I might not be able to do that. I might not be able to commit as much. I might not be able to attain the same level of discipline and mastery. And that seed felt real enough to turn my head away from all of the things that I might have wanted to do, or all of the things that inspired me. But then it got to a point where, well, I had my heart broken, and then I was like, well, I had to look at myself and think, well, what makes me someone that isn't worthy of love? Why wouldn't someone want to kind of love me? Why would someone choose to reject me? And that's a really hard question to ask yourself, because you know the answer. I knew the answer because I wasn't there. Like, I wasn't even present in the situation that I got rejected from. And that's why I knew I had to change, because I couldn't lose anything else. I couldn't sacrifice anything else because I was too afraid to show up. And that's how I feel every day when I go into the studio. Like, I don't know what I'm turning away when I think about how long it's going to take me to track that vocal. I don't know what magic I'll be turning away if I decide to just do something else. I don't know what I'll turn away if I don't sit down and fuck around at the piano for 6 hours, even if it leads to nothing. I don't know what I'll be rejecting in that moment. So it's just, it just got to a point where it was like I couldn't not look at that question anymore. And it's a question I have to kind of look at every day, because I have a studio now, I have friends now, I have a girlfriend, I have all of these things, I have a purpose that I can't let slip away from me, and I can't push away, which I'm very good at doing, which is why the first EP that I put out was called Self-Construction, because I lost the project, had to remake it again, which was like perfect encapsulation of what I'm saying. Like, I lost everything that I'd worked for, and genetically I think I have this like bitterness and resentment to life itself, so it'd like really push that button and be like, well, haha, like, do you really want to make music? Well, fucking do it all again.
Yeah.
And so that was why I called it Self-Construction, because it was just like I was caught in this loop of destroying myself and rebuilding myself over and over and over again, but always feeling like I needed to destroy, because it was always usually built on something that wasn't true, which was this idea that I couldn't do what I wanted to do, or that there was something else that was more important. Like, I satisfied my physical survival, and yet still actually wanted to trade it in for just nothingness. Like, so then I had to look at some kind of like spiritual, emotional survival. And that's why I now have a 2-room studio in the heart of London, and I can play any instrument that you put in my hand. Like, and I didn't know how to do that 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I watched that whole process from afar too.
Yeah, and everything sounds great. And even though I still kind of hate it all, I trust that it's what it's supposed to be. And I get that validation from all of the things that are in my life. I get that validation from the strengthening of all of my relationships between everything in the outside world and myself. I wake up in the morning, I'm excited. I'm not angry. I'm not as angry as I used to be. I'm not as reckless as I used to be. I feel like I have something to lose. And that has been kind of just like leading me to now.
Yeah.
And then all of that is kind of probably jumping the gun here, but that's all kind of come to a head in the last couple of months. My mum got diagnosed with cancer last month, and it was interesting because it was like, well, the biggest, I don't have to tell you, but the biggest test that I've had to face in terms of my resilience, but also the way in which I perceive what happens to me and the people around me, and this belief that life is beautiful, and this belief that everything will be all right. And it's really tested that resolve and made me be like, okay, you say these things, you believe these things, but now you've got to do these things. I'm like, but I've been doing it. I've got 2 rents to pay. Like I'm sitting down, working hard. I'm doing it. Can you get off my back? And then something like that happens, and you've got to like kind of coach a parent through their own like process of dying. Like
nothing prepares you for that.
No. But I mean, I say that, but the last couple of years have, because it's either now I can either become bitter, I can become angry, I can allow my mum to give in to that bitterness and that anger and hopelessness and despair, or I can actually be solid, or I can actually kind of plant my feet in the ground and kind of smile through the process, as hard as it may be sometimes, and be like a beacon of hope for her, and just kind of just be that physical embodiment of the message of like, everything is all right. And that's kind of where I'm at. That's filtering into the music, like in the next project, which is called, that's actually the first time I've told anyone the title. It's called In the End We'll All Remember. And it's all about that feeling of all rightness, that feeling of oneness that I believe that we'll return to, because I felt it in my life. I felt it in my living life. And I felt it when I'm around death, that oneness, that connection, that beauty, like it filters into the lyrics like go on, go forward, follow the voice that's so reassuring. Like it's just that's just what I want to do now. It's not, and that's circling back to your question finally, it's not even about the music itself, it's about the message. It's about the message of like being able to make something that someone can see and go, I feel all right. Like even if it's like might be my last week, this might be my last day, the world has got its foot on my neck, I can't take this anymore. Just being able to make something, a signpost, a pillar, anything. Like I might just make actual signposts that just say everything will be all right. Like, and the music is the medium for that message. And whether I make a game, whether I make nothing at all, and I just live my life, it's all in service to that message of universal all rightness. Because that's just what I feel like we need more of.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I completely agree. I mean, at this point, like just looking out at, where we are in the world, it's a crazy, crazy, crazy environment to be in on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And now we're January 5th, like seeing another wave of COVID conversation being like the highest case numbers ever, new records ever, after we all were like, wait, I thought we were on like the downside of this. And I thought we could get back to living. And the like torture that's brought to so many people who like can't travel to see like a loved one who was born or just died, or has been diagnosed with an illness, or just the laundry list of pain really that this is put on the world, and like each person having to like persevere that. I'm with you 100%. I think about the message, the passing on the knowledge, the way I can similarly share inspiration, and that's what this podcast in a way has become, where it may not be the message that comes through music, but it may now be through conversation. Like I find myself sitting at times just being like, hey man, I'm really inspired to like speak on this subject. I don't know where to start. Like, do I make a song about it? Do I just literally like come here and like pop on the camera and just sit down and like make a video of myself, just talk about things that are on my mind to like get that off my mind? Like one of the original ideas for a podcast or educational thing was obviously like going to be about recording and the process of building this studio over 14 years, and how I learned about buying used equipment on Craigslist and how I learned about what equipment to buy and developing all these amazing relationships by buying used equipment and like noticing that each tier I went up as I started to buy more expensive equipment, I started to network with more successful people. And like some of those people became mentors for me that taught me about equipment that I now use like every day that I had no idea about, you know. And like I have somebody I consider a close friend who lives in England that I bought my Sony C800 from off eBay for like $5,600. It was like one of his like favorite microphones ever. And like I started messaging him about what he did in the past or like what he did in his career, and found out that he's like a huge producer who's like super unknown in like the London area, and like learned about so much new equipment from this guy. Like he told me about like the Fairman equipment, which is the main like now recording channel I use, the preamp, EQ, and compressor. Like I had no idea about this. Like some small company in Denmark, and the guy used to service like Fairchild compressors, and it's like the number one most expensive, most sought after holy grail piece of equipment in the world. And like this guy was like the European person who serviced all of them, and then decided, oh man, these things are like chewing up tubes, and like some of the circuit design in this might be redundant. Let me like do my own thing. And just like found this equipment that's like beautifully musical and like satisfies what I need. And I talk to Carl regularly, and we like developed like a personal relationship, like talking about our families and things that are going on. And, you know, he collects like CDs and vinyl. He's got like 50,000 pieces of vinyl, and he has like a hi-fi system where he takes like all his records, converts it to like digital, puts it on hard drives, and will like sell hard drives to like Alchemist and Just Blaze. And, you know, it's like just to be able to meet somebody who has that love for music, does that kind of thing. Like, and he's teaching me about equipment, and like, he was one of the first people to teach me about like he was the first person to teach me about musical EQing, where he was like, hey, what's the key of the song? Okay. Everything that you're going to be mixing, you're going to want to reference the harmonic notes of the key of the song. So if it's like a song that's in E, the lowest octave of E might be 47 hertz. And then the next one is, you know, double that and double that and double that. So those are going to be critical points for like your soundscape. And when you're building out a stereo image, like you can look for like what octaves are present, what octaves are missing. And just like, it just like all these things open my mind from a digital relationship of a person I've never met, who I now have probably known for 6 years. And I would like mix a song, and I would like, he would be like, send me the kick drum. Okay. What do you think about this kick drum when you hear it? Blah, blah, blah. We talk about it. Okay, cool. We'll try like EQing it, do this, send it back to me. I did that. I'm like, holy shit, this sounds so much better. Okay. Now add the snare, kick snare. Okay, cool. You know, this is not quite in tune with each other. Let's pitch this up, blah, blah, blah. Like walked me through mixing songs by way of passing files digitally back and forward, and like opened my mind. And that came from like buying a piece of equipment off eBay.
Also came from you being open to and curious to have those conversations, because I've bought shitloads of equipment. I don't have anybody teaching me this shit. So so actually it's you. It's the openness and your own curiosity, and also your just fucking general kindness is.
I mean, the curiosity is a major factor for me. And that's why I started this too. Like I realized I've met way too many people for one person to ever know in a single lifetime.
Yeah.
And I've always had, which goes back to why I think I had some of the resentment, was like everybody I work with, I show up with the intention of like, I want to help you as much as I can. If that means like there's other people I know in my network that can like help you, I want to make the introduction. And so if I feel like I'm putting all this effort in, why is nobody looking at me and saying like, damn, this dude's really going above and beyond. Maybe I can reciprocate. And I get that that's like in some ways not the way you're supposed to look at it. So I always do humble myself by being like, well, I don't have expectations of anybody to do that. Nobody has expectations of me to do that. I just have like a desire to help somebody as much as I possibly can. And obviously I realize like that's not a common quality in people. So I can't have that expectation. But I also realized like, wow, I've met all these amazing people who are super talented, and I only have with some of them like a surface level understanding of like who they are as a person. And so I found like this to be such like a fascinating way to sit down one-on-one across the table from somebody and just learn all these things. Like I had no idea half those things you just started out explaining to me about your life. And I consider you to be like a close friend, somebody I talk to regularly, also who lives halfway around the fucking world, you know? And it's just like, it's been a really exciting new thing for me to explore people. And, you know, even though like my dad passed away in September, and prior to that, I recognized, all right, my parents are getting older. They're not going to be here for forever. This is a really cool method for, to some degree, I would say, like documenting a person. You get photo and video or video and audio of a person, ideally explaining like their life to me. And that's why the podcast name is Yours to Keep, because really it's about like a gift to you, in the sense that you now have this recap told by you, your own story of your life, because I don't feel like people get the chance to do that and think about doing that. And then before you know it, you've done so much in your life, you've forgotten half the things, and you know, you could possibly be like taken tragically, and like so many people may not know all these things that happened in your life. And so it was such a fascinating thing for me. You know, halfway through building out the studio, I realized like I'm a music historian. Like a big part of what I do is I archive and save all of my clients' work for like decades. Some people's like entire catalogs are on my hard drives and maybe not anywhere else in the world.
They probably don't even have it.
Yeah, most people don't. And that's something I love, is that people know and trust me with their works, with never not one leak, security issue, problem. And I hold that like responsibility with pride, you know, and in this same regard, like I find this format like such a cool thing to just create as a collection that over time will just be like all these people's story told by them. And it's been really exciting. It's like probably the thing in my week I look forward to the most is like, oh, cool. Like Kane's in town. Amazing. Like that's going to be cool. I'm super excited. You know, like I do love making music still. And like there are a few people I really look forward to in that regard continuing to create with, but this is like, I think, taking precedence for me actually as like my exciting part of the day. You know, my thing like I most look forward to in like a work hobby project kind of part of my time.
Do you feel like it brings you closer to yourself when you have these sorts of conversations, in a certain way in which you hear me talk about what I've been through and the way in which I perceive the world? And do you see markers of like that same perception in yourself? Like, does it give you like a certain sense of validation in that sense?
Validation may not be like the word that I mean
validation in the sense of like, not like, well, maybe validation is,
for me, like it's more that like it obviously makes sense to me why we have such a great connection.
Yeah.
And I find that in that, you know, and that might be like a validation of like our relationship and knowing like, okay, I know you're not like a shitty person. You know what I mean? Like the way you grew up, you had a lot of opportunities to be a shitty person. Yeah. You know, like you could have been easily somebody who was robbing people, fighting people, tormenting people, like been a drug addict, you know, but like you were in that environment and came out as a really sweet, well-intentioned, super helpful to everyone else type of person as well, you know. And it's just to me, I think just learning about people in that sense, it's just enjoyable. I don't necessarily know about validation. For me, when I was like really young, I felt like I've always been like an old soul, and I feel like I've like found who I am as a super early age, and I've like refined those qualities, and I've had relationships, friends, mentors who've like helped me chisel away at things that I think are my worst qualities. I think still like the accountability to a specific thing like making music is probably where I still fail the most. and I haven't necessarily had that support from a friend, or like, going to the gym, doing some kind of like physical activity. Like there are things that I look at and I'm like, I know I need to be doing this, but I might want to go play video games. I might want to go eat some fucking food that I shouldn't be eating. Like I can find excuses. I'm a really good procrastinator. And I also just have always been a fan of enjoying life, and I can easily get out of anything I'm supposed to do to find an excuse, to just go do something I enjoy in life. And honestly, like just talking to people is one of those things that I just really love doing. Like putting a phone away, putting a computer away, whatever, putting like all those distractions away, which is another thing that I think just as a reflection of life I got really turned off by, is like, especially with people I'm really close with, the realization of like a hangout is everybody sitting like on a couch or at a table, like kind of on their phones independently. And I don't know if that's a result of like, well, we're all so close, we already know what each other have going on in our lives, so like there isn't a lot to continue to talk about.
Well, there's still like life.
Yeah.
Like what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. There certainly is that.
If we ever stop kind of having anything to say in that regard, then I'll be extremely worried.
Yeah, I think like for me, like in the current present moment of like where we're at in life, that became very difficult because things got politicized in a way where now you start to have that kind of like left, right side of anything you pitch up to talk about. COVID has its people who are like diehard on the vaccine and people who are diehard against it. And you start to realize like, damn, all these things became like so divisive. It's really hard to have conversations. Like if you're not open-minded, I can have a conversation with somebody on either side of that scale and understand like where they're at. It doesn't always have to be this like, oh, that fucking idiot on that side and that fucking idiot on this side. Like that, I think, made conversations so much more difficult because you get to the point where you can hit a wall with somebody easily who may get offended that you're on one side or another and won't continue through a conversation to like understand. And I'm a big fan of like agree to disagree because like it's your life and I can't impose anything on your life. I mean, obviously, if you're doing things I see that are directly harmful to you, I'm going to be like, yo, man, like, are you thinking that through? Is there like an intentional thing that you're doing? Like, are you trying to hurt yourself or like, what is it? But outside of that, it's like I'm just open to like hearing somebody's perspective. But I've realized if you have certain conversations like that with certain people, you hit a wall and you start to like, now things are like angry and antagonizing and escalating in a way where it's like, that's not my intention. So like, I'm just going to not like, now I know I can't go there. So, and it just puts you in weird boxes where it's like, you can't really speak on like how weird and fucked up things are right now. And for me, as a very emotional, very like connected to people type of person, I find myself feeling really helpless most of the time because like I obviously see the problems, and as like the engineer type mindset for me, like I want to fix it, like it's not that complicated. But then you look at like the bigger picture and you're like, holy shit, that's crazy. Like our government's fucked up. And most governments around the world are fucked up. And we're seeing that like very visibly in like the last few years. I mean, obviously long before that, I was probably just too young to really be paying attention through most of my like childhood and early adult life, and too distracted in the studio for the 20s to 30s chapter. But now I'm really looking at shit and just being like, man, where are we? Like, this is so fucking weird. Like all these governments are really looking like they're betting against us as like the citizens and not there to be helping us progress. And it's like a certain feeling of helplessness to be a really like emotional, thoughtful person, and it's like, well, what am I supposed to like go one by one and just start feeding people on the street? Like I make adjustments to like, okay, I'll never like throw away food so long as it's good enough I can pass it to somebody that's homeless. So like every time if there's leftovers, like I just look for somebody to give it to my way home. Like now I try to like, my girlfriend's big on like environmental stuff. I carry like a bottle of water, so it's like eliminated my single-use plastic, and like I try to get better with like bringing silverware, bringing a to-go box, so like I don't have to use things that are just trash, because I love the ocean I love diving. I love animals. And like all of that trash is just literally like fucking spewed into the ocean, you know? And I love food and I love eating animal products. So now with like the Eat Lancet report, which is another thing like Claire showed me, that's like the world published like some of the best scientists in the world publish like a balanced diet that's best for the environment and human nutrition, you know, which is like eating meat once a week in like a 6 or 8 ounce portion, eating chicken twice a week, eating fish once a week, and mainly eating like vegetables and beans, you know, and like how that offsets the damage of all the layers of environmental shit that we put into this planet as humans. And I mean, I was definitely like not conscious of it. Excuse me. And so like she's taught me a lot, which is why like I super fell in love with her in the beginning of our relationship, was just like the education and like the thoughtfulness that she has was super inspiring to me, in that like, yeah, I love all these things, but like, what are you doing, you know, to help? And like, that was like a big, like just check of like, oh shit, like nothing, you know? And like, let me be conscious of that and like fix that. Cause like, I'm just taking, you know, from like the world environment, and, you know, just tons of trash, and not thinking about the materials of things I'm buying. And just it's really nuts when you just realize you haven't actually sat in time to reflect on like your life's abuse of that ecosystem and what that means for like the future of where we're going. And that's like a major problem to me that I am still trying to figure out the way to amplify the information and the message. Cause like it's a lot of noise between sitting here at this table and like having these ideas and having things and like having the world be able to receive them in a way that can make a difference, you know? But for me, that was all like, those were like huge pivotal points in thinking about like, I've never grown my own food. I've never like had a meal that I mean, I've fished and I've caught fish, and I've killed and gutted and cooked fish that I've caught. So I can say like, I've eaten food in that regard, but I never understood how hard it was to take seeds and grow food from soil and seed, and how much time it takes and how much effort it takes, and how guilty you have to feel to like throw away good food that other people put that time and energy and effort into making. And it's like really eye-opening to me to start thinking about, oh man, my like goal of like success in my next home that I want to like hopefully design from the ground up is like a house that's alive and like has nature, animals, all the food and water recycled to support an ecosystem that can like feed me, and I can be like fully off the dependency of these fucked up, you know, like food production systems that like are making us sick.
It feels endemic in our society that we genuinely, as you said, don't know the time and effort that it takes to toil soil and grow something from a seed. Like, but that's the same spiritually, artistically. Like, it's something that you wrestle with when you sit down and think about your progression as an artist, as an artist, and it's something that I've wrestled with, and it's the time it actually takes, and this idea that like, speaking more specifically about art, that like I might not get to hear the best thing that I make for another 50 years.
Yeah.
And like,
it's wild too.
I hope that's true.
Yeah.
Like, I hope I haven't already heard the best thing that I'm ever going to make. I know I haven't,
Yeah.
but I can understand why that might turn me off, or why that might turn somebody else off. And then I also understand why people don't grow their own food, but like, not knowing the effort that it takes to grow something of sustenance, of nutrition to the body and to the soul and to the heart and to the mind and all of these other things, like, it takes so much time, it takes so much effort. And I guess the only real way to like persuade people, other than to just do it, is to like, well, yeah, it's just to be the example, I guess. Like to give someone, have a friend over, cook them dinner, and then be like, that is like probably one of the best things I've ever tasted. Oh yeah, I grew all that.
Yeah.
Like that's the reason why it tastes so good, is because you can sense the effort. You can sense the care.
Yeah.
And you can feel that connection in a way. And that's, for me, is like, that's the resolution. That's how you resolve the thing. And that's why art is so powerful in the world, because, and I'm not classifying like certain pop things and things that reflect
entertainment-ish,
reflect our instant gratification culture that we live in. It's the real stuff that really hits you, that really penetrates, that really uplifts you and empowers you, is the things that you can feel have taken time and effort. It's the instrumentalists who have dedicated themselves to their craft. It's the people who have sat alone in a room and tried to understand what it is that they feel, and what this drive to connect is, and what this desire to not feel so alone is. That's why it's so nourishing, is because it's that seed and that soil that has been wrung over and over and over again, and that's basically why I'm vegetarian. But I also have so much compassion and empathy for the people who don't do that.
Yeah.
Because it's hard.
Yeah. Is that a conscious choice for you? Like, you went from being like eating meat and everything to being vegetarian?
Yeah, it was. I read one quote, and it was, "How can you expect to feel alive if everything you've consumed has died?" And I was like, "Well, that's pretty sound maths." At least in my mind, like that works out to me. And then it was more like asking myself the tough question of, could I chase an animal? Could I catch it, and then could I stare it in the eyes while I kill it, and then I could, yeah, if I needed to. Yeah. Do I need to? No, I don't really. So there was that element to it. I used to think that I wouldn't be able to do that, but now I think, yeah, I could do anything I needed to do to survive. Like, I've killed myself over and over and over again, and walked out into the unknown a million times. I can skin a chicken, but but it's more like the do I need to? No, I don't really. Like, just leave it alone. Like, we have an industrial world where we can make anything we want. Like, we don't, and grow anything we want, and we don't really need to be having that kind of relationship. There can be something else. So yeah, it was a pretty conscious choice. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't know you had a girlfriend. Is it the same one who's been on and off? Oh, okay.
No. So we finally we broke up. So this is a long conversation, which I can tell you about probably after
this timer goes off in 3 minutes exactly.
The cliff notes are that I've been dating a girl in Australia that I've never met.
Okay.
And we've been dating for over 20 months.
Okay.
And we never have FaceTimed.
So it's just text?
Phone calls.
Oh, okay.
We talk on the phone like obsessively. Okay. And through like the beginning of COVID, we talked on the phone. Like we would like set our own records and be like, oh my God, we just talked on the phone for like 2 hours. Oh my God, we talked on the phone for like 3.5 hours. Like, we talked on the phone for like 6 hours today. Like, holy shit, we just talked on the phone for like 10 hours.
How did you meet each other?
She was here. Her brother had passed away, and she was in town. He lived in like the beach cities, and she was here and on Hinge, and we connected in January 2020. And she was like, I'm a vegan. And I was like, this isn't going to work.
Next.
She asked me, like, what's your favorite food? And I was like, butter cake. I actually spelt it like bunt cake or burnt cake. And she was like, what's burnt cake? And I was like, no, butter cake, like from Mastro's. And it's like the most animal product, like a pound of butter, milk, ice cream. And I was just like, oh, this isn't going to fly. Like, if I can't take you to like go share like my favorite foods, like that's a huge part of my life, like is sharing a great meal. So, I basically just like, we kind of like stopped talking. And then like 2 months later, like literally right at the beginning of March, I was like getting ready to go to the beach, and I knew she was in that area. So I was just like, oh, let me just like see if she wants to hang out. We started talking like right at the beginning of March. Kind of just hit it off conversationally. I forgot what the initial subject was. And like just obsessively started like texting each other, and then she called me, I think, quickly, and I was just like, oh my God, like this girl's voice is like incredible, you know? And so like that opened the door for our phone conversations, and then
So why
like,
the no FaceTime?
well,
You know what she looks like.
yeah,
Okay.
I've seen pictures of her, and
Follow
and
each other on Instagram.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And like, you know, every person I know in my life is like, are you sane? And like has grilled me 1,000 ways to Sunday to be like, hey man, you know, like, and you know, like I have zero doubt that she is like the person that I'm talking to. And regardless, I've met like one of the smartest, sweetest, most intelligent people I've ever talked to in my life. So like, that in its own way has been like the most fulfilling relationship I've ever had, because we've like talked to like the deepest part of each other's human soul, you know?
The timer who is reminding us is that
Wrap
there's someone
it up.
that there's someone outside. That's how we started our relationship.
Yeah.
Well, we had met once before. She's a filmmaker and I was a cameraman on one of her shoots, on her first ever shoot. And it's, you know, you walk in and there's like a female director, which was rare, and you're never expecting her to walk in and be your age, smoking hot, and like a bit of a weirdo.
Yeah.
So we hit it off straight away, and then we exchanged a couple of emails and stuff. But I was flying to LA like the next couple of days, and then while I was in LA, we just spoke every day on the phone. I think we probably FaceTime like once, but I don't think we FaceTime more than that, if that at all. And it was, yeah, I can relate to that whole like 3-4 hour phone call, but also this kind of old fashioned way of getting to know each other, where it had to be, you had to be present. Like it's weird. Like it's a weird thing because you're just talking to each other.
Yeah.
But I felt like I'd never started a relationship that way. I've always started with like sex or like
of course
some weird thing. But this was just like, we're just talking.
Yeah.
I can't have sex with you, which is probably good.
Yeah.
Like I can't kind of project anything onto you or use you in any way, or like I can just have a conversation with you and I can just ask you questions and you can ask me questions.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And then it's like 4 years later, I always wonder like, and I know the answer. Would we still be here now if we didn't do that? No, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have.
Yeah.
Because nothing else had lasted up until that. Because I hadn't ever just sat on the phone and just had a conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't wait for you to kind of tell that story at dinner. So
Yeah.
everyone can be like, well, so that at least me and Helena can be like, that's exactly how we were. And I remember the feeling. And the fact that we only did it for 3 months. But the fact that you've done it for 20 months is like, fuck it, that's fucking amazing. Like the fact you still have stuff to talk about is great. And this like idea that, you know, you said, oh, we just sit around on our phones, and I feel like, is there anything that we have to talk about anymore? Have we exhausted everything to talk about? It's like, that's not possible. You've just spent like 1,000 hours plus on the phone to one person and you're still going, and you're still as obviously excited as ever.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Yeah. Just to put a bow in this like Cliff Notes side of it, we started with the conversation at the beginning of March, which was like seeing videos in China of like people getting locked into apartment buildings and being like, yo, that's crazy. Like, what the fuck is happening? You know, and then we started having more conversations. She's got family in England, which is where she was born. So like we were just kind of watching from different pockets of the world what was happening as COVID started to like unravel. And it was like, oh, it's March 15th or March 10th. I'm planning to come to LA March 23rd. We don't need to FaceTime. It's 2 weeks. Flight got canceled. This COVID thing is some weird, crazy things getting more and more serious. I'll see you in May. I'll see you in June. Oh, it's getting canceled again. Oh man. Oh, there's riots. Oh, there's all this crazy shit that's happening.
And she's in the worst place. Like literally there.
Melbourne's the number one. She was in like the Noosa, like Gold Coast area of Australia, went back to Melbourne, and has been in that city as the number one most locked down city in the world within weeks of her moving there.
Yeah.
So she's been like full prisoner, you know, and she's like, she works in the government. She works in city planning. She's a town planner. So she's like super disciplined, wants to be like prime minister in Australia. So she's very like by the book, and I'm just like amazed at her level of discipline throughout all of this, which is why it's been more of a challenge to not just be like, oh, I'm going to break rank and like fly to America because I can.
Yeah,
it's like, no, if like other citizens and other people can't, like I'm following these rules. And, you know, that's been obviously super hard for me, but I also admire the discipline. And she was supposed to fly here on the 17th of December. And within hours of supposedly flying out, she tested positive for COVID. And so she's tested positive like 3 times, and her like regimented like every other day testing to try to get a negative result so she can fly. She'll fly like within a day. But this is like all happening now in real time. And I'm hoping she'll be here this week, and like literally could be any day. Like the problem is Australia's now like maxed out on their tests. So like everybody's trying to get tested so that they can travel, because we just missed another holiday like season of people being together, and all their tests are like out the window, so they don't have any way to get testing. And she was like, she got the vaccine, the booster shot, like was basically like asymptomatic, so she was really like, what the fuck, like I can't travel, this is crazy. And now we're like literally living it like day by day, waiting for like a negative result so she can like book a flight and hop out of there. And like as that's happening, we're seeing like the world fall back into like the great unknown of what COVID chapter 27 is going to be for us, you know. And so it's been one hell of an experience, to say the least, you know, and it's been incredible at the same time to just purely connect in like that way with someone who lives like halfway around the world and not even like question it, you know. So I think that pretty much says everything I can say about it.
Congratulations. I'm happy for you.
Thank you, man. This was a treat. I'm glad I got to catch you when you were in town. Thank you for coming through to do this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I don't think I've earned my Polaroid on the wall yet, but one day.
When we make a song.
One day. I've been fucking dying for like 5 years to have the Polaroid on the wall, but it's fine. It's fine.
Epic.
Cool, man.
Signing off.
Right, let me go see if Helen